When do you guys do a CMA? Do you know? Is it just if you're going to be doing a listing? Well, you will do one if you're doing a listing presentation for somebody, or if somebody's looking to purchase a property and they want to understand if the value is there, and to help them understand that here's a good range for the home to make sure it's not overpriced or outside of the potential for appraisal to actually happen. So the very first thing we're going to want to do is gather some data about the subject property as well as some area stats. So what are some of the things we're actually going to be looking for when we do this?
School district, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, acreage, land.
Sorry, somebody's texting me to get in again. I don't.
You know, if someone's telling you that they can't get in, they may have tried in the email. Like there's the Zoom, which is the top little thing to click on, and then there's another one right below it. If whoever clicked on the one below it, if that's what's going on, because that's what I did whenever I first went to get in, and it wouldn't let me in.
Can you see me in a waiting room? It's no.
If that helps at all.
Don't. Yeah, it does. Thank you. I'll see if I can pull her up again when she actually in the waiting room. At any rate, yes, those are some of the features and things that you're going to be looking for when pulling up a CMA. So again, just to recap, it's going to be your location, street, neighborhood, municipality, county. Total square footage is good if it's available. The square footage has only been in the few years ago, they started to implement square footage in the MLS. You'll see it more on tax records now. Not every property has it, but unlike a lot of states that are doing CMAs, they pull from square footage. So we get a lot of people that are from other areas that come in and say, well, why don't you do it through square footage? And I don't really have a true answer for that, but I know that that's been the way it's been for a long time. And only recently has that changed some. You'll look at the year built. What are some of the recent renovations done? Any kind of interior finishes, external features, does it have a swimming pool, a barn, so forth. So in order to really gather that information about the subject property, one of the things that I do initially when I go to do a CMA is I look to see if the property has been listed on the MLS previously. And if I don't know that area, I'm first going to check the stats in that area. So the very first thing I want to do is come in here to the search bar on the MLS, and I'm going to type in the subject property that we're going to use today, which is 620 Pikeview. And I see, okay, yeah, it was sold, and it was sold in 2016. So I look at this area and I say, okay, the area is Plum. Well, maybe I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Plum. So I'm going to first go into my search. I'm going to do some statistics. I'm just going to select basically everything here, or you could just select active, sold, coming soon, contingent, and under contract and expired. And I'm going to go by the school district first. And I'm going to come here to, this is Plum. I don't have any other criteria. I mean, nowhere on this initial sheet. And I can see that there's 250 matches. So I click on the results. And right now I'm not deep diving. I just want an overview of what's happening in this area. So I'm going to select all. I'm going to come down to the bottom and I'm going to hit stats, go to tabular, and this is going to give me my at a glance stats of the area. And I can see right now that currently there's 9 active, there's 178 sold, there's 6 withdrawn, 21 expired, 24 contingent, 2 coming soon, 10 under contract, and overall 250. So now I want to look at, I know that right now there's, in this whole school district, there's only 9 active that are potential comparables for my property or active competition at this particular juncture right now. It may increase as we narrow some things down, but we're going to look also at the solds, because these are going to paint the picture of, you know, what it is that has been happening in the markets surrounding this property. Now, so this is by the school district. I don't necessarily refine it just to the school district. And I'll share with you what I actually do now that I know a little bit about the area around it. I do want my active, I want sold, coming soon, contingent, hold, and under contract. Now, the only other thing I really do in here right now is I'm going to just put in here resident single family. Even so, sometimes condominiums and townhomes will come up, but I'm truly not looking at those as comparables for anything associated with the standalone single family property, especially the one we're going to be looking at today, just as I wouldn't use new construction as a comparable for an existing structure. So now I want to come in here and I'm going to do a map search. I'm going to start as close to the subject property as I possibly can. And typically when they're going to do an appraisal, the appraiser is going to look at comparable properties as close to the subject property as possible, usually not going further than a mile radius, unless you're in an area where maybe that's a little bit challenging. You might be in more of a rural area where things aren't so close together. We have to broaden it. You might have a unique property that might push you out a little bit further. Nonetheless, they really want to see going back maybe 6 months, usually no more than a year, and as close to the subject property as possible where they can actually find some comparables. So I'm going to start here within a quarter of a mile, and I'm going to type in the subject property. And I see right here, right off the bat, there's 6 results. So I'm out of curiosity, I'm going to kind of come in here. There's one actually on the street itself. And I just want to take a glance and see what other ones are around here. For sake of time, I'm not going to spend the exact amount of time that I use to actually go through. I'm going to show you how you can move forward and you can actually do the deep diving as you've got properties you want to explore, but I'm going to show you how you can actually do a CMA and, some different formats that you can use for doing the CMA for presentation purposes. So now I'm going to go back to my criteria, and I might want to refine it a little bit, but being that there's only 6 matches, let me go up to at least a half of a mile. And I see that there's 19 matches. So that's going to give me a little bit more of an opportunity to really be able to pick from some comps that might be suitable for the subject property. And I'm going to now open this up. And I know that the subject property had 4 bedrooms. It had 2 full, 1 half bath. So that's part of what I'm taking into my equation. The lot size is probably going to be fairly similar to a lot of these. It wasn't a huge lot. And I will go through and show you some of the pictures. And you're going to weigh it against some of these other properties that might be suitable as a comp. The other thing I'll bring to light is you may be in a situation where, maybe you don't have the exact 4 bedroom, 4 2.5 bath, or the square footage. If it was, let's just say 1,800 square feet, you might be able to get away with going in with a 5-bedroom and or a 3-bedroom, and the square footage within, not that far from each other. So 18 to 21 would be pretty suitable as well. And keeping in mind that appraisers, when they go into doing their appraisal, they do what's called bracketing the comps. And what that means is they can take a little bit higher and a little bit lower, and they can kind of gather with certain adjustments what the actual value might be, or a value range might be for a specific property in a specific area. So what I want to do now is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit the back button, is I'm going to come down here to where it actually says CMA. A few other options before I click that, just so that you're aware of what you can do down here, is if you say you went through here and you knew that this property, and we'll click a couple others, we'll say this one, this one. Let's just say that these were some of the ones you chose that you would want to have a quick understanding of, because you thought they were probably pretty close to the subject property. I can come down here and do a quick CMA. And at a glance, this is going to pull up those properties that I selected, and at the bottom kind of give you what is your average list price and sold price. So this helps give a snapshot of it, and what's your average days on market, which is kind of nice, because that's also going to come into play when you're actually doing your CMA. I don't use that as a tool that I share with clients necessarily as much as the actual CMA itself, but I do take those with me to have at a glance sometimes when I'm actually on a listing appointment, or even for buyers, if they just want kind of a quick synopsis of the area, I will do it that way to be able to share with them pretty quickly. So let me uncheck these. And I'm going to go down here to where it says CMA. Now, as you do that, if you have a new contact that you've not put in, it'll ask you to do so, or you can use the little down arrow here. And I use myself as the dummy and put myself in here. Come up here to where it says pages. Now, if you selected all of these, and initially, just so you get a feel for what actually is in what they're offering, I'd say select them all, because it's just as easy to come here and X out the ones that you don't want. Once you've had it done and reviewed, you'll know better which pages you like, which pages you don't necessarily think you'll need. Sometimes less is more with certain people. Sometimes people are very, very number oriented or statistic oriented, and you may want to include certain pages for them over somebody who wants things pretty simple, clean cut, and easy to digest. Make sure that whichever pages you are using, you're able to understand clearly and clearly be able to articulate to your client, because if they've got questions on something, you don't want to necessarily be fumbling around with it at that particular time. So for right now, we added all of those. And because I know it was listed previously, I can actually put in here the MLS number for it, which I probably should have saved. Let me look that up real quick. It should be in. Does anybody have the MLS open? Just get out of this real quick. Where's it over here? No.
Hey, Linda, is this one that you're going to be listing soon?
No.
Oh, darn it. I have a buyer for Plum.
Oh, do you? No, no, this was actually an old property of mine. I just figured it would be easier. I don't know why it won't let me put it in. I want.
I think you're under the for sale tab. Is that why?
No. It should just grab it. And I don't know why it's not grabbing it. Ugh. I'll do 1, 2, 2, 5, 3, 8, 2. That's not it. Five, 3, 8, 2. Okay. So I can spend some time here if I wanted to fill in some of these other openings. I might want to look and confirm some of the items that are on here versus something that I may be coming up on to list. I may not include the inclusions from a previous sale if I'm doing a CMA for a future forward sale. So if this all looks pretty good, then I'll go on and move on to the cover. If you've already filled out your information in the MLS, it's going to pull that information into your CMAs. Then I go to my comparables. Now, from this, I can come down here to add from listing. And I've already identified the criteria basically that I'm looking for right here. But as I do this, I mean, 19 matches is pretty good. So now I just want to really comb through it. When I select that, I can literally look at this from a single line point, or I can go into agent full, which is my preference. That way I can actually go through some of the pictures to see if I think that they would be a pretty good comp. And again, without doing each one as I'm doing with you, you just have to know that I've gone through, just like I am here, looking at the pictures. I'm looking at the number of bedrooms, number of baths, some of the features that, you know, are going to make it similar to the subject property. So I'm going to keep clicking through here, and you don't want it to be too overwhelming. So if possible, I mean, I'd pick maybe 1 to 3 that are active. 3, well, usually about 3. If you do 3 active, you do 3 sold, 3 that are contingent or under contract, you're going to have a pretty nice basis to gauge it from. But, you know, you don't have to have an exact number. And let me preface this also with, there's going to be different people that do CMAs different ways. I found that this is something that I've done that has been pretty effective in coming up with the right price range to make as a suggestion based on what the market is showing to share with clients. So we've already gone through and we've looked at the information, and we are selecting the properties now. And I don't believe I've seen too many that were active. So I might want to broaden it just so I have a little bit to understand competition, or if I truly don't have a lot of competition in that area, that could be very, very favorable to the seller. So let me come in here. So here's one that's under contract. Maybe that one's a good comp. And I'll even say Crestview was. So I'm going to add the selected. I'm sorry, do you have a question? Okay. So I'm adding the selected to my CMA, which is what these are. And you can see the ones I chose are within less than a mile of the subject property. Now I don't need this many. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to even refine it further. And I'm going to take out a few that might not be the best options for it. So I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to remove these ones. And I can see that I don't have any active in here. So I'm going to go here and go back to my main screen. And I'm going to broaden my search just a little bit to see if that will help me get some actives.
The
And-
ones that you removed, was it just like square footage as to the reason why you removed them?
Honest to goodness, I haven't gone through this as though that property, we'll go back through that. I'm just kind of going through the criteria that can be chosen.
Okay.
Typically, I mean, it takes me to do a CMA and pricing in an area, usually about an hour and a half or so. And I don't want to sit here and go picture by picture. I wanted to give you a property so that you guys can go back and practice doing this and coming up with numbers based on the information I'm sharing with you, more so than going picture by picture and item by item. I will give you the framework. I'll give you the layout for tonight's CMA and Stats training. It will all be put in Facebook. So you can then, after this, go back and practice either on this same property or another property to actually come up with some numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
Linda, I had a question.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there, in regards to all the criteria that you use,
Mhm.
is there, how do I want to explain this? Are there criteria that you utilize that hold the most weight? Meaning, the school district, I think is a big one, especially when some schools are tremendously better than others. But like, I mean, is it
You want
bedroom
you want to
versus
you want
square
to
footage?
you want to do as much as I mean, you could have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with 2,100 square feet and a 5-bedroom, 3-bath with 1,800 square feet. You know, I mean, so you could have a lot smaller, more condensed rooms. So you really want to look at which one is going to be more like the subject property. And yeah, I mean, square footage, I mean, that's good, but you're not always going to get square footage. You want something that is going to be a good representative of what that property kind of looks like. So if I went to the subject property, which I'll go back to, you'll see some of the, if you look through some of the pictures, the location, like I said, you're within less than a mile and often within even a half a mile of the subject property. I would look for, what's the year, if there were renovations done, and these descriptions on the actual face page on the MLS usually will give you, hey, new roof, new furnace, new air conditioner, newer windows. You're going to look for the property lot size. You don't want to necessarily take a 1-acre lot against a 1/4-acre lot. But if that's the only ones that you've got, then you can kind of make some adjustments for it over here where it says adjustments. And because we're not appraisers, I kind of stray from this a lot. I really don't make adjustments there. I do it in a program called RPR because it's just a sliding scale. Is this better or worse than the subject property? And if it's got more land, I might push it up a little bit, because we can't determine the actual value or the value attached to what some of these renovations are, but you can look for similarities in what this property has in comparison to those in the immediate area of that property. And as long as you've got a lot of things that are, very similar to it, then those are the things that I would pull as a potential comp for that property.
Hey, Linda, what about, does it matter if the house, say it's for a listing, that the house was built? So it's never changed hands. And now you're comparing it with homes in the area that are considerably older. Do you just widen your circle in hopes that
Yeah,
you find something?
Yeah, you can widen it some. Are you saying that it's like original owner with no updates to it? Or just
Well,
up on the MLS before?
Well, I have a listing coming up, but they built this house and
Okay,
it's bigger and than anything that's around it. It's built in the middle of a field basically in Portersville that's very old.
okay.
And so I figured, do I have to just widen that circle then to
You
find?
probably in more in areas that you're in like that, where you're not going to have more
Neighborhoods?
folks, right? You're probably going to have to broaden your search to be
And
able
that's, and the one thing that concerns me is what's gonna probably populate is all of the new construction that's down in Zealy, all those track homes and those, Arden Woods. And again, that house is, it's gonna be an unusual one, I would say.
and it might be. And so,
Yeah,
I would broaden your search, and,
okay.
we obviously can spend some time specifically. If you guys have some properties that you're finding to be a little bit challenging, just let me know. And, we might have to spend a little bit more time deep diving in different directions. Um, it's a science that you'll start to pick up once you really get comfortable with the process of doing the basics. And really, I would take properties, and I would actually go to vacant homes. And I've even done this with some classes when we were able to do it, and basically did what was called the Price It Right training. And I would give everybody that came to the training an MLS sheet, and I'd take out all of the numbers. So you wouldn't know what it was listed for. You wouldn't know much of anything other than I gave you, I think, a total of 3 or 4 properties, and we would go and visit them. And I'd give you some basic information about the area. And then I'd say, okay, give me a price. What do you think that this property would do well at? And then I would even say to you, we can go back to the training room, and without cheating, because it doesn't behoove you to just look it up online, do a CMA. So I'd give you some practice runs, and then we would come together as a group and say, okay, how close did you get to pricing it where the agent has now? Or maybe you came up with a different price. Maybe the property's been sitting there for a while and you did better than even the agent who has it listed. So there are some things that you can do to kind of start getting acclimated with this process and understanding pricing. And so this is just more, the process I'm going through right now is a little bit about how you do it. And we can even go back through, and I'll show you some of the highlights on some things that you're really going to look for, even more specifically to that exact property that we're using. But for right now, here are the comparables. I say I'm happy with the choices that were made. Here's the map layout of it. So we can see how close these properties are to the subject property. So it's all really close. This is the adjustment that I'm talking about, as far as in here, you can actually add some of the variations that one might have that another doesn't. Because right now, based on the information that the computer has and the comps chosen, it's giving a range here on the low end of 149.9. The median is 172, the average 178, and the high end 220. So there might be some on here that, you know, are a little bit outside of the price that we might put it. It might be a little bit higher than. So this is where you can actually look at things and say, okay, well, is this one truly a comp? Now this one's actually on the same street, 4-bedroom, 1-bath versus subject properties, 4 2.5 baths. So this one might still be pretty viable. So I'd probably even go back and I would do a side by side. Now this is a ranch and this is a 2-story. If I don't have enough, you know, ranches, I mean, a 2-story can do. I don't think that that's going to do you a disservice, but if you can do a ranch for a ranch, I'd say that's probably going to be your ideal. So this will give you your side by sides and kind of your remarks. So let's just say everything is copacetic with that section. I can look at the overall pricing. I can put in a suggested list price in here. I could say, and again, I would never recommend that you say, yeah, you should list your property for 178,000. I would probably give them a range based on what the comps are showing. Now, maybe in doing this, maybe the 220 seemed right on for a high end, you know, for this property, or maybe it seemed a little bit too high. So maybe I would say that this property, and I knew that maybe 149.9 was a little bit too low. I might suggest a, you know, 165,000 to 183. And then you would hit the finish button, view your CMA. And it just takes a second and it'll pull up. And here's what it would look like when it's put together. And when I say about understanding the different pages that are in here, I think that these are pretty crisp and easy to read, and it gives you the opportunity to go line item by line item across. I think that presentation is good for a lot of different folks, but it also goes into a lot of graphs. You know, your days on market. What does this mean? How do you explain what this would mean? Do you want to include this in your CMA? And it gives you a description at the top on what they are. List price to sell price. This is just a graphed view in comparison to what they have in that stats breakdown that I showed you initially. Here's a brief summary of the comparables. And then it goes into the CMA Pro Report, where it's almost like a face sheet on the MLS, kind of condensed and put into this format that they could read. This does the highest price to lowest price. And as you can see, it can be filled with a lot of information, and some of the information looks a little bit redundant. So this is where you would say, okay, now that I see what all the pages are, I can go back and kind of pick and choose based on, you know, the kind of client that you'll be working with, somebody that wants, like I said previously, maybe more graph stats and numbers and information versus somebody who just wants kind of cut to the chase, show me the comps, give me the end result type of client. And there's a lot of pages to it. So this is what it's going to look like from this angle. Questions on at least how to access it, add the pages, and pick the information. Did that seem pretty easy to kind of go through at least?
I had a question real fast. Do you prefer this West Penn's CMA over the NRA CMA?
NRA or
NAR, sorry.
National Association of Realtors.
Yes.
I don't use them for doing the CMA.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I typically will use this. I'll use RPR, and those are my two main formats. But now I'm going to show you guys a few other things too. Your options as far as presentation for a CMA, they're endless. I mean, I use the MLS. I can use RPR. I use a combination of the two sometimes. There's third-party software like Cloud CMA, Toolkit CMA. So if you come across a CMA software that you like, that you found was the presentation was nicer or more in alignment with how you want it to be presented, if NAR has one that you like, by all means, the presentation is fine, whichever way you want to do it. I always will caution you. I know that there's one out there too called House Canary. There's a lot of options that you can choose from, but you need to understand the basics enough to know how close in the ballpark are you to what range you should be suggesting to your client. And so this is fine. You can pull this up. You can use this. But make sure you do your homework in understanding the property and the surrounding the property. So if I go to, let's go to this property one more time real quick. The very first thing, like I said, we kind of got a feel for the area. I look at this, I say it was sold. It was listed at 159.9. I come down to the bottom, I see it was sold for 153, 6% CMA or seller assist was asked for. So that means that the 153 truly wasn't what the seller's net. If I click on the history of the property, I see it was a new listing in May and was under contract at the very beginning of June. So it was only on for a very short period of time. As a matter of fact, 9 days before it went under contract and then ultimately sold. That's important. And it's important because it's going to help paint the picture that especially even an appraiser is going to look at this and say, okay, well, with light inventory, popularity of the property, so it's sold really quickly. It kind of helps tell a bit of a picture as far as how this property presents in conjunction with the rest of the market. So we would look at the pictures. So I see, okay, it's a 2-car garage. I know in the description it says freshly painted. This somewhat dated, but new appliances. So we would go picture by picture and then also read the description, what was done to this property. And this is what you'll do with all of them to pull up a true understanding. So I'd come in here and say, okay, it's all brick, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It's in Regency Park. I can even break this down by the neighborhood itself to kind of see what all has sold within Regency. The home features vaulted ceilings, freshly painted inside and out, updates to the main bathroom, the master bath, all newer stainless steel appliances, new fenced privacy, level yard, screened in back porch, newer shed, hardwood under the carpets, with the exception of family room, and tons of storage. That tells a pretty good picture. I could even go to supplements, since this was a property that was listed not that long back, and kind of look at the seller's disclosure to see if anything was put in here as far as any updates. I'm not going to go through all of that right now, but I would pull it down, I'd review it and see if there's anything that has been done from that standpoint. The other thing that we're going to look at is twofold. you see here, this little icon that looks like the Capitol building. If you click on this, this is realist tax. You're going to want to understand what are the taxes in the area, because I can look here and this isn't going to be my most current tax amount right here, because this is from when this property sold. So I can go to realist, and this is where you're going to pull a lot of your information and confirm information that you have. So if you go into realist, you'll see too that there's the ability to pull comps from here if there are any. Some areas they don't easily pull comps. You can look at market trends, learn a little about the neighbors and the neighborhood profile, and you can quickly generate a report from here too. So this is kind of a neat, at a glance kind of opportunity to pull comps as well, and then generate a report. So these might line up nicely with some of the comps that were already chosen. But again, there's no program that I know of that is going to be 100% spot on just by typing in an address. You really want to be able to do some deep diving and understand the property. You're going to want to know what the tax ID is. If this was listed previously and I come up here and I see here's their tax ID, their map block lot number, their parcel ID. This is how the property is identified. I'm never going to assume that the agent has entered this number in here properly. I want to make sure I look on the tax records to confirm that it matches correctly, because if there's a typo, or maybe it's a double lot and they didn't include the second parcel, but it was meant to be included. You want to make sure that all aspects that are associated with that property being for sale are listed on the MLS sheet, clearly identified, so that people know what is being purchased. I look at the assessment and tax. So here's my tax records. As you can see, it's 4077, and it was at the time of selling 2795. So taxes have gone up. But I need to understand what is the assessed value total, and that's 133.3, and that's the same for the market value in that area. So this is more for the tax purposes. Sometimes you'll have folks say, okay, well, why is the market value so low? Or they read the assessed value somewhere and say, oh my goodness, it's only worth this much. Well, this is the value that they're going to use oftentimes to help with the, derive the taxes for that particular property. So it's not necessarily a solid indicator of exact market value for that property. It will give you some characteristics of the property. It will give you the year it was built. And sometimes there's a discrepancy between what was listed on the MLS and the tax records. Here's your living square footage. And then down at the bottom, this is a new feature right here, this cell score indicator. This gives you a rating and is a kind of a projection on the likelihood of this property being listed for sale in the next 6 months. So in this particular case, there's only a moderate chance that it may come up for sale again. But here's your last listing information, as you see on the MLS. And then you can come down here too and find if this current owner has a mortgage on the property, which they do. And you can tell whether or not it was, if a second mortgage or anything was taken out on the property, because it would show up here as well as the lot size. And if you go on to the MLS sheet, you'll see in agent remarks, taxes and lot size are taken from Realist, which is what we were just in. They're estimates, they're not guaranteed. And then that way you're not gridlocked into that being the exact number, but yet it's the source that we're pulling from, so we identify it. The other thing that you can do is up here, see where it says tax. There's Realist tax, but there's also the tax search. And so we could do the same thing in here and go to 620 Pikeview. Sometimes they did it in 2 words. Or not. Take this out. I don't know why it won't pull it up under the address. There's a reason I want to show this to you. That is weird. STITT. Right here. Okay, that's roundabout way, but the reason I pull this up is it looks very similar to the other. You can pull up in through this, the last listing, photos, history, parcel map, flood map. So, you know, we can ask the insurance agent that we have access to, is it in a flood zone? But nowadays with technology, there's a lot of different mapping that you can pull from just to verify, but you ultimately want to make sure that the sellers are aware of, you know, they would know because they would have to have flood insurance. So you can ask them, but I don't always just assume with, if there's any kind of change to the mapping for the flood zones, I don't want to assume that I have the most up-to-date information. So I can cross-reference if I feel that there's a chance that I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be in a flood zone. I will ask an insurance agent to also check and verify. But what I liked about this though too is it has an estimated value range. Again, not always, but if you remember, and I didn't do 100% deep diving, but our high end was at 220, and these ranges were somewhat not too far out. Let me see what the ranges were again for this. And again, we didn't pick real specific, but I grabbed just a few just within a half-mile radius, and your average in here was 178, and they have here the estimated value 188. So had I done some more deep diving, I probably would have gotten a little bit closer to a range similar to this. Not saying that this is 100% accurate either. You have to do the actual deep diving into the property to make sure that your range is not just a grab and go. It may end up being very close to what it is here. But I don't look at this information and say, oh yeah, okay, I'm done. It helps to have it pretty handy to weigh against. And here's a confidence score for this. So the confidence score on this is 60, and they have their confidence range 60 to 100. So that's not a very high confidence for that. But again, it's still something that I saw relatively not that long ago that I've started to use as another way to weigh against the work that I've done to make sure I'm in the correct zone when I'm going to share the information with my sellers. The other thing that I'm going to show you in here is if we go back to the property. Let me go back. I don't know if any of you have heard of co-op. This is something that is, again, it's newer, but you'll see them here. See where it says co-op? If I go to this particular co-op, here's the listing data. And what's nice is here's another platform that you can pull from to give your clients some information based on what it is that you found. So I can come to a property report in here and ask it to generate some information. And this is what this particular format looks like. So if I felt that this range was really good with the estimated value, if this is pretty good as well, this might be something I would print off because it pulls in some comparables automatically as well. And maybe they were good choices for a comparable. And I can either utilize this as a report if I like the presence of this one as well, or I can come in here and change some of the dynamics. I can widen the search. It gives you the option if you go to this, is it this one? This is going to give you some demographics. I don't know if everybody on the call is familiar with list reports that AJM does, but it gives you kind of an area stats on the school, if what's in the area. This you can print out and take it to an actual listing. So if you want to see, maybe it's somebody from outside of the area, what are the schools? Maybe somebody's looking for a private school or a Catholic school or specific school. Here's some schools in the nearby area. Here is some different businesses in the area. Maybe they are interested in having a gym close by. Well, there's a couple options for gyms. Automotive services, banks, different eating establishments and drinking establishments, some other public information that they may have an interest in knowing. It's just a litany of information that you can have. And it's really great, even for those that are familiar with the area. Maybe they don't know what the latest crime information is in the area. This kind of gives you some current stats on some things that might have happened in the area. So again, it's a lot of information, but sometimes that information kind of gives you that extra edge when you're going on appointments. This is your consolidated option under the co-op data. And this, you can pick and choose which of these sections you would want to have included in a report. But it's nice because you can specifically assign it to your client's information. So Mr. and Mrs. Devlin, or in this case, we'll do McKnight, but then you hit review report. "10 hours later." Come on. Any questions while we wait for this to pull up?
How do you, with the CMAs that you present to your listing appointments,
Mhm.
generally, what do you find that interests them the most? Like, do they, because you had said to choose pages. I mean, obviously you don't want to overwhelm them with a big booklet. You know what I mean? I would obviously think they're going to want to see the comps and like the marketing trend, I think would be very beneficial. But I mean, generally speaking, what do you find is most beneficial to your potential listing to present them?
I
Like a pretty sweet
I-
CMA?
I assign it, or I choose based on what I know of my clients. So as you start to look at the different personality types that you will meet, When I'm on the phone with them, I can get a sense for, what their interests are or what they like. If I'm meeting with them in person, I'm bringing a CMA, I might not know, so I might bring more information. I might bring a separate stat sheet and tuck it away, because if I'm meeting with somebody who's truly into numbers, I can pull out at a glance, here's a market snapshot. Here's your list price to sell price ratios. Here's your average days on market. Here's your average sales price in the area. And then I can pull out my CMA and actually go through properties that are very similar. But I do get a good feel for my clients on the phone or potential clients on the phone based on the conversations I'm having and the questions I'm asking and how they respond. And based on that, I then will do my report accordingly. I'll show you one that I do quite frequently in RPR here in a second, that I think is it's crisp, it's clean, it's easy to read, and it's not giving me any hiccups along the way. But here's the report that was generated based on what we just pulled up, which is kind of nice because this too will give you side-by-side comparisons, things that are going on, historical photos and current photos, things that are going on in the market. What is the price and the days listed analysis? So how long has it been on the market? What kind of decreases are in the area? Here's the subject property. Here's sold properties right here. These are predominantly 4 bedrooms. There's a couple 3 bedrooms in here. What's the days that they've been listed? So you can see which ones have been on here longer, and you can see square footage wise, this one's pretty. These two are like your higher end square footage. But if you look at the square footage of the subject property, it's at 1,700. That's substantially larger than some of these other ones that may not be necessarily viable comps. But nonetheless, you're looking as overall what has sold within the area in the past 160 days or less. And then same with your actives. So this is what all is in the area currently that would be competition or potential competition for it. So that's what's nice about this particular format, is it's not necessarily doing a full-blown CMA, but it's giving you kind of like that market snapshot at a glance, but in a report format. And in this particular one, this one's going to give you your side-by-sides. So here's your 4 bedrooms, here's your 2 baths, 2 partials, here's your assessed value. So this assessed value and this assessed value are somewhat close. So this one's at 119.9, this one's 118. What are some of the other similarities? Would that be a good comp? This one sold or was listed for 42 days, and it sold on November 4th, 2020 for 200,000. So if this were to be for sale right now, it probably would have commanded a much nicer sale price than it did even 4 or 5 years ago. So this is kind of a nice at a glance type of report format to give you some demographic information as well.
Linda, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I never seen this co-op version. I know about the CMA, but would you print out both and then you're going to bring it to the clients, or are you put together?
No, it depends on the presentation. Like I like the way this looks right now, this front page, compared to the way the MLS has it. And there's certain pages in here I might not need. I'll take certain information from this sometimes and kind of keep it on a back burner or print out. Maybe I want to print out this front sheet and use some of the other pages from some of the other CMAs that I've done. But I don't want to make more work for myself either, as far as, mixing together a whole bunch of reports. This is something that only recently I've kind of stumbled upon and found that it was a nice asset to what I was looking at as a whole. So I kind of go and do my thing like we did initially through the CMA on the MLS. And I really do my deep diving. I do my homework, get my stats, look at the tax records, pull all of that information, see if it was listed before, and then as long as I know what the area is doing and commanding, then I can start feeling more confident that I'm picking comparable properties to the subject property to give a good range for my client. And that being said, sometimes I'll print the matrix report, but oftentimes I do RPR. None of these are bad. However you choose to do your presentation is fine. With RPR, you have to be a member of a board and you have to have a NERDS number that you can sign up with, and then this is free. To me, in all honesty, I've used RPR for years now, and I think that this is worth its weight of paying for joining a board every year. That doesn't mean that I plug it in just like I did here and I'm like, oh my goodness, look, it's a 5-star rating, I'm done. But sometimes it's very close. So this has a 5-star confidence rating. And what RPR does is it pulls from MLS stats and public data. So it pulls from more than just public data that maybe Zillow is going to pull from. So your accuracy, I find that with 4 and 5-star ratings, there's a higher likelihood that the suggested range and the suggested estimated values are closer to being the truth than not. And in here, what's nice about this particular format is this gives you your information about the area. It gives you information about your property, a suggested RVM. This is a Realtor Evaluation model. So this is a confidence rating that incorporates even like from the realtors. It's not just an automated outcome, but you can devise a number of reports from in here or create your own comp. So if I were to create my comp from in here, I would first confirm the home facts, and then I would go searching for comps. And so it's going to come up with, your actives, your solds, your pendings, single family home, and it does at least a 3-bedroom, at least a 2-bath, and living area anywhere between 1,300 and 2,300 square feet. I can come in here and I can draw a shape. I can do a box, a radius, polygon. I could do it by school district or specific area or even a micro neighborhood. If I don't have enough from this format, then I may go a little bit further. Now, if I don't specifically choose mine, you'll see in here these stars. These are the properties that they use to create that range and that estimated value. So I don't necessarily have to come in and pick, but maybe I didn't like the choices or didn't feel that the choices that they chose were sufficient enough to give the best range for my clients. I may come in here and play around with it some more. There's a lot of options in here. But what I like about this is the presentation. So if I get out of this, well, actually, I'm going to select just a few of these. And I'll just, because I haven't really looked at this, I'm just going to select some. So those are solds. I only want 3 really. If you do more than 3, if you feel that it's going to command needing more than 3, by all means, there's no wrong answer to it. But again, you don't want to overwhelm people looking at 10 properties, although you might have Mr. and Mrs. Smith say, well, I know that the neighbors across the street, they sold the property. And they think that it's a comp, you can sometimes use it because maybe it is. Maybe it goes too far back to be used as a comp, or maybe it truly isn't a comp. And sometimes by having some information in your direct area, you can actually pull it up and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, yes, that property did sell. It sold 2 years ago, and it really would not be a comparable for your property because, and be able to showcase some of the things that would make it not a suitable comp for their property. Let me pull up an active. Let's just say that this is one, and then we'll do a pending. So if I chose my comps here, this is probably not too bad. And let's just say I noticed that there were some things when I was telling you that I don't put a specific price in, I don't. I use this adjustment scale that they have in here sometimes. If I look at the subject property and I know that this property, I think is going to be a good comparable for this, but maybe there's features in my subject property that make it just a tad bit better than this or a tad worse than this property. I can say that this property compares less than what I would consider for the subject property. So I can just use this little sliding scale. If there's only mild variations, if it's really drastically different, if I think this one here is, this particular property is way worse. This one I'll keep as the same. There's nothing too different about that. Maybe this one is also not as good. Maybe this one's a little bit better. Then it will do adjustments for you. So you can see that the adjustments increase the value of the subject property by this amount without me actually putting in numbers, just kind of saying, okay, well, there's slight variations that stand out. And you'll understand as you're going through it, you know, maybe I had a 4-car garage and this one has a 3-car garage, but everything else is the same. Then I might slide it, you know, down just like a peg. And I'm not adding a true number to it, but I'm kind of saying, yeah, it could be used as a comp. It's just not quite as good of a comp as, or it's not as good of a property as maybe the subject property is based on what I've seen and been able to identify here. So it will do it for you. And then when you get out of it, here's your adjusted price. The other thing that you can do in here is if you truly know the value is going to be, we'll say 198.5. Maybe this had been a number that had come up previously that really was good, but you wanted your range not to go up to the 272 because at 272, they'd be missing their mark all over the place. Maybe you wanted to tighten it some to, and 129 was way too low. You could come in here and put in a number, let's just say 174,900 to 212.5. And you can save it and then it would print this on the report. And so when you hit create reports, it's going to pull up. You can do it as under the property, you can do it under the seller's report. And as you click on this, you can customize pages in here as well. And it will pull in your comps. It will pull in the market data that is surrounding the property. You can come down here and put, you know, Mr. and Mrs. McKnight. And hit run report, and it's going to generate a report. It'll sound like a doorbell when it's done. And I'll pull up one that it has done recently. Here's what the report looks like. So see how crisp and clean? I just like the presentation of this. And here's what the comp analysis pulled up based on the work I did for this particular property. And it's still, if you look here, here's your current estimated value. Here's what my comp analysis did when I wanted to refine it some. Here's your 5-star confidence rating that kind of made me go, okay, it really is in the ballpark of where it probably should be. But this presentation to me, I thought was a easy one to read because again, this is selecting it side by side. I was easily able to go down, easily able to look at the pictures up at the top to get a kind of an idea. I can see exactly how close it is to the subject property. I just really think that this presentation is pretty nice. And then here's your surrounding properties on the map view, as well as what the market is doing directly around it. So there's your comps and then of course market activity. So if they wanted to see things outside of what you pulled as a potential comp, then it's going to generate things just from the system. And so you can download this, you can, send it to your clients. I just think that it's just kind of a nice presentation. And that's how it sounds when it's done. I might not like this particular outside picture, so I might work with something to kind of change that up. But here's what we just plugged in. And here's your numbers kind of at a glance that you can then share with your client. Questions?
So I tried to utilize this to do one for a property that whenever you put it in the very beginning,
Yeah.
it said that there's nothing. Like, you know how it'll give you the range and then the stars for
Yep.
the comments.
Yeah, sometimes you'll put it in and there's just no stats to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And once in a while that'll happen. But you can still generate reports even if it doesn't have anything for that particular property. It's just you don't have your initial to go off of, but it will still create these same type of reports. You just have to plug in some of the information.
Right. So, and whenever I went in and I went through all this and I did the creating of like the report and actually going into get the number that I wanted to find. I still had tough times because this house that I'm looking to list is in an area that is kind of rural, and it is the most recent anything in the school district, and that is close to it. There's not a single comp, truly, because they're all, I mean, they're just not comparable at all based on the houses. You know what I mean?
Right. And for those particular areas, you might have to broaden your search. I do a lot of things within West Penn too, through the map. If you go into the map,
Oh, and then you draw it?
I
Or do you
I can look at Pike View all along here, and I literally spend time. I can come up here to the layers, and I can come to the statuses within here, and I could do active. I can do sold within the past 6 months. I can do contingent. I can do under contract, and I can also then do my radius search from here. And if I wanted to go out a mile, again, I can pull it up from this and say, okay, well, let's look at some of the solds in the area. Let me highlight these particular ones that might be right in the area because it's so close and I can visually see kind of where it's at. They also have the satellite view that you can actually come in. You can do it this way. You can do the Google Earth. So I'm actually now able to look, what does this area look like? What does this neighborhood look like? Is this an area where things are like really taken care of? Is it on a cul-de-sac? Is it, how close is it to transportation? When I say I do spend a lot of time looking at pricing and areas, I'm cognizant of everything that's happening around that property and even going up and down the street. Recently, I had done a CMA for somebody interested in a property, and I even pulled up, he was in a plan, I don't have it on my desktop, he was in a plan, and I put the plan name in on the front page in here when I'm doing my search. You can do it by subdivision or plan name. And I took out all the time frames because it's automatically going to default to 180 days. But I came in here and I wanted to see all time. And so if you're familiar with, you know, a plan name or a subdivision, even a street, you can go back all time to see, you know, what has happened or sold on that street or in that plan from, you know, the history of them recording anything, to kind of give you a snapshot of what that area is doing. Now, where he wanted to be was in considerably higher than where he probably could have been. So me doing that and pulling the stats, he was a numbers guy. He was able to see he was probably a good $50,000 or $60,000 higher than anything that has sold in that plan. And he hadn't had any updates, where others had finished basements and some other amenities that had been recently updated and offered for less. And so it was a way for me to be able to also show him, hey, here's everything that's happened in this area, as well as what are some of the things that were done by these other properties that, you know, you're commanding this higher price and you're offering less. So they're going to be using your property to gauge it against these other properties. There's a lot of tools and resources within the MLS. I utilize the mapping area a lot because I can do a lot of different things within here. If you're not familiar with the layers, you also can come into here. Now this MLS status is a more recent thing, but the parcel characteristics in here, if it doesn't have listed the square footage or the lot size, you can hover over it, or you can come in here and zoom in. You can find out the owner's name. You can find out their address, because you'd like to assume that the numbers are relatively, you know, easy to follow, but sometimes it's not. So you can come in here and type in an address, and there's just, this has made it easier to look at things at a glance and be able to derive some reports in conjunction to what it is that you're looking to share with that seller. When I'm doing a CMA2, if I'm looking in an area such as Plum, I can also come into the results and I can pick a property. Let's just say I picked this one. I can go into some statistics. Oops. I can go into my statistics, into charts, and I know that I'm in Plum Borough. I can actually come in here and look at what are the historical sale by year. I can look at list price to sell price ratios, or kind of come up with any report that I think might do them as justice as well. Because how many of you have ever been on an appointment where the seller says, I'm going to wait until spring? Well, I can tell you that here's a breakout of your historical sales by year. So this is over a number of years that they've done this. And in 2017, January was a hot spot. But these numbers, yes, right here, July seems to be a high number. September was a high number. October was a high number. December was a pretty high number. So is this telling me that it's best to wait until spring? No, it really, it's not. It's telling me year after year, it's got some consistently nice sales across the board each month. So it's not that you know, you might be able to get in before a lot of competition might pick up if you're waiting for the spring market. But I can actually provide stats based on what I'm looking to provide them, to tell them and show them. It's not me telling you this. I'm showing you historical trends, historical sell by year from 2015 till 2020. There's really not a bad month to list a house or sell a house. So I'm not doing you a disservice in any way by saying, oh my goodness, you know, the best time to sell is in the spring, you know. But I think that that's a mindset. I think if you're proactive in understanding the market, interpreting the market, and sharing that information with your clients, you're going to be in a position to be able to share with them what it is that you've learned and show yourself to be the area expert. And there, a lot of these things will come through time and use of the systems that we have and the tools that we have, the resources we have in place to help us better be able to inform and educate our clients on the area around them and have them have a clearer understanding of their property and what that value, projected value would be. Again, you're going to be providing them with a range, not an actual price. You never want somebody to come back and say, hey, you told me I need to list my house at 174,000 and I have to sell it at 165. You know, that we don't have a crystal ball. We can give you a range that the market's most likely to support. Questions? Anything else that we can run through? I mean, I know that this already went over an hour. Doing CMA trainings usually do take longer than an hour. And when we deep dive in on each area, it, you know, it just takes a little bit longer. But I think the end result in having you guys understand some different ways you can go about for, you know, the presentation piece of it and having an understanding of some things that you're going to look at is important. So when gathering your data about your subject property, the things that you're going to want to take into consideration again are your location, the street, the neighborhood, municipality, county, square footage if it's available, number of bedrooms and baths, property lot size, year built, any renovations. You want to gather tax information. Tax information has an impact also with the sale of a property. You know, the higher the taxes, you know, it puts maybe the affordability of a property into a different bracket for some buyers as well. You want to gather the assessed value and the property value. You want to know how to identify the parcel ID. When you're going on appointments, you want to make sure that all decision makers who would be party to the transaction are present. You want to gather information about your subject property and properties around it. You want to gather the listing data. You want to look, has it been listed before? If it has, you know, what are some things? How quickly did it sell? What was the average days on market? What about that property, you know, do you think made it sell quickly? You want to look at comparable properties around that property as close to the subject property as you can in order to gather the best insight to be able to share with your clients. You might want to use, I would say 3 to 5 solds, but again, it depends on how much data you feel that you want to share with your sellers. You don't want to overwhelm them. You want to give them an idea based on how close you can get to the subject property. And as we said before, sometimes you have to broaden that search depending on where the property is located and how close you can be to actually finding comps that are near that property. You want to also look at the properties that are contingent and under contract. While the active ones show the competition in the area, the under contract and contingent properties can kind of give you an idea on, we might not know what the closeout time frame is, but we might know, you know, how long did it take to get under contract once it was listed. A suggestion, I was going through some articles and there was a pro tip given that if there's a property that's on the market and under contract that's very similar to the subject property, to reach out to the real estate agent who has the listing of that comparable property and tell them that you have something coming that's similar to their listing and give them a rough idea without giving any kind of confidential details of when you'll be expecting to have the listing go live. And there's chances are that they may have had at least one person inquire about their property since it's gone under contract. And if they've turned that inquiry into a buyer client, then they may want to bring them through the listing that you may have up and coming too. So it's a good way to possibly even make a quick sale. I thought that was kind of cool. You're going to want to look at trends in in the micro area. So in other words, if there's anything happening in the immediate area of the subject property that would drive the price of the home up or down, you want to be aware of that. Is something happening nearby that could cause it to go one way or the other? And then you put it all together. And putting it all together is taking all of the data that you've done and the deep diving compared to the subject property and putting it into that presentation, either through the MLS, through RPR, through the Cloud CMA, Toolkit CMA, NAR, which I'll have to look at because I've not seen that they had one, but I'd be curious to see. Always open to learning new ideas and new ways to even explore, because there might be something out there that you like to try on differently. And then, of course, look at the co-op data as well and some of these automated systems. And I like to use those to see how close I've got or how different maybe they are from what I came up with. Like I said, it's a science that gets refined over time. I'll put the handout from today and this video on Facebook if you want to revisit it. If you guys have any questions, if you guys have any properties that you're struggling with finding comps, let's talk about it. Let's see what we need to do to kind of broaden the search. And again, part of what I like with coaching is I'm hoping that there's power in numbers. And if we were to look at everybody in coaching that is actively involved in wanting to have their business grow, we could be looked at as the biggest mega team in the whole office. And there's a lot of strength behind what we can do to help each other in either questions or things that are coming up within a particular listing that you might have going on, or even with a buyer or doing CMAs, that we can kind of have discussions on and problem solving done through to help each other out with whatever's going on. It's a great opportunity to learn from each other and help each other out along the way. So if you don't know each other and you're on this call, reach out to the others that you see on here, reach out to others that you might see on the Facebook group. I'd like to see it be more interactive. I don't want to hear me talk all the time, but it's a good opportunity. We had an agent that was in coaching, and she had a tough client, and I revisited after we had done a mastermind. That client had then reduced the price of the home to where it needed to be priced, and it ended up selling. So there's usually something good that comes out of us collaborating and using each other's strengths and skill sets to maybe overcome some hurdles that we face. With that being said, I'm done talking. If any of you guys have anything that you want to ask, say, now would be your chance.
I have one quick question, if it's okay, like
Sure.
it's short. Okay, so this is my buyer client. It's really she's looking for this property, and then she texted me. This is her text message. She's like, "Well, this property is assessed in 34.5K, and they're asking price is 69K. How should I answer that to question?"
I would say, that's, I can appreciate where you would see that number and assume that is a good price for the property, but just for clarity purposes, it's usually used for tax purposes. It's not a true valuation of the value of the property. That's where we come into play. I mean, you have your assessed value, and they get confused, or they'll look at Zillow. What we do is we take the market as a whole, and we look at doing these CMAs to come up with a projection of value. The assessed value is usually used for tax purposes, and you usually don't want that tax number to be where the sales price is, because that would have an impact on your taxes for sure. But that's really what they're looking at. So I would say, you know, try not to be too confused by that, or put too much weight into that as it's, you know, not an indicator of true market value.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think it's safe to say, or would be easier to explain to clients, that the assessed value would be the value of the outside of the home and the land combined, where the market value is taking into effect everything that you've done to the inside of the home,
I think that that's probably somewhat fair.
to
You
help
know,
them
you have-
understand it a little bit
Yeah,
better?
and you have those that, you know, do their assessments on a particular area and they do their drive-bys. So they're not truly getting the full, you know, ebb and flow of the whole property. And sometimes they might not even drive, they might just do overheads or kind of, I don't truly know exactly what they do, but I would probably say that's a safer assessment than not, because they're not going in the property, and they're not taking the time to pull, you know, numbers of actualities in the area that would derive a range of value for that particular property or the properties in the area.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. All right, guys. Well, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks for showing up. And as always, if you guys have suggestions on some things that you want to learn, anything you want to revisit, let me know, text me, call me, email me, and we'll put it on the agenda and go from there.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
Hey, Linda, are these usually 6 to 7 on Wednesdays, or do you have a particular
Yep.
day? Is it always Wednesdays?
Wednesday, 6 to 7. I'm hoping to do another one. I don't know that it's going to be another evening one though. But I'm going to try to record as many as we possibly can and put them on the Facebook page. If I find that everyone says, hey, Wednesdays at 6 don't work, we can work around a different schedule. I just threw it in the middle of the week and said, okay, we'll try and at least put something in here and try to be consistent.
Yeah, because I haven't been getting the updates from Cindy about the dual career people. We
Oh,
had that, and then those kind of dissipated, I think, once COVID hit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, her schedule is different than mine, but
okay,
if there's things that work better for you or anybody who's dual career that needs meetings, let me know. We can work around that as well.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't ever attend anything during the day,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's some that are in that position, so that's why I at least wanted to have our Wednesdays be at least one evening. And like I said, I'll try to record almost anything else.
Okay,
So that
that's perfect. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all I've got for tonight. So enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
Thanks, Linda. You too.
Thanks.
Bye. Have a good
Bye.
week, everybody.
You too.
Bye.